It's not often you hear about DMCA in the FOSS world, and it's even less often when a FOSS project is the one filing it. But that is exactly what happened with FFmpeg, recently posting on Twitter, after nearly 2 years of waiting for Rockchip to fix their FFmpeg copyright violation, one of the FFmpeg developers acted. Thousands of lines of code were copied from FFmpeg, posting a picture of the DMCA takedown of that repository. Now, the replies to this are great, because whilst we're still in the FOSS and open source space, most of the replies were saying things like, this is how you're supposed to enforce your license, good job for enforcing your license, if you can't follow the license, you can't use the code, all this good stuff. But once it started breaking into, like, the regular tech space, it sort of started to shift. And there's a lot of people that are very negative about this move. For example, where is the reply? I support this, but isn't this project FOSS? Intellectual property is a farce. It's a tool for large corporations to undermine their competitors using the power of the state. It violates free market values and harms the world. Why the hell is FOSS code copyrighted anyway? There seems to be this misunderstanding, and this has always been the case amongst regular people, that if something is open source, if something is FOSS, that means you can just do anything with it. That's never been what it's meant. There is a license on the code. There is rules you have to follow. If you don't have copyright, the license doesn't exist. Now, I do agree that big companies abuse copyright all the time, but completely doing away with it also does away with open source licenses. Now, if you want to do that, hey, that's a discussion unto itself, but you don't just get rid of copyright without also getting rid of the licenses. So first things first, who or what is Rockchip? This right here is their mostly English website. This is the English version. There is random parts of it that just aren't translated. I assume this says products. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. They are a Chinese SoC or system on a chip provider established back in 2001. Now, I say provider because they don't actually do their own fabrication, which is pretty normal in this space. And over on their GitHub, they do provide a number of repositories, RKBin, U-Boot, they have a kernel source repo, and a couple of other things, but the one we care about is MPP, the Media Process Platform Module. If we go to it now, this is the one that has been taken down. As mentioned in the original post, this wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment thing. This is something that has been sort of brewing for a while, just waiting to see if they're actually going to fix this. So they first raised the issue back in 2024. Hey Rockchip, blatantly copy and pasting FFmpeg code into a driver and changing the license in violation of the LGPL is not cool. Linking over to one of the files in violation, which we obviously can't see because it's been taken down. And for some reason, Shotcut came in here to play defense. I don't know why. You know, Shotcut, the video editor, I think whoever's running this account assumed it was a different situation, because in Shotcut's case, they actually did purchase the copyright for some core part they were using. That's not what happened here. Rockchip was just using the open source repo and then claimed that it was theirs. Now, for all of the problems I and many other people might have with GitHub, you have to give them credit for at least one thing. When they have a DMCA takedown request, this is something that is publicly viewable. Every single one is public information, obviously with names and other private information redacted, but every single one of them you can just go through and see, and the FFmpeg case is no different. And I really do wish that a certain other platform that I frequently use also did the same thing. However, that's never going to happen. YouTube. I am a private, probably developer or maintainer to the FFmpeg project, the code from which is being infringed. More specifically, private have substantial contributions to the H.265 decoder in FFmpeg, the code from which, beside other decoders, is being infringed. I don't know why this is private, because this would be part of the public repo. They probably just have a general rule to hide any sort of private information, even though in this context, it would also be public. FFmpeg is an LGPL licensed multimedia processing toolkit containing multiple components. The component that is being infringed is the libav codec library, which contains a large number of audio and video parsers and decoders for various formats. As I mentioned earlier, this was for something called MPP, the media processing part of their system. And here is a list of all of the known violating files, but considering that all of these are here, it's very possible there were others also in MPP. The entire repo's been taken down because I don't think you can just do a DMCA takedown on a singular file. I think it has to be on the entire repo. Now, this is the important part. How do you believe the license is being violated? The above-mentioned files, and possibly others, are derived from libav codec source code, as is clear from the code structure, and identical comments. Come on, if you're gonna copy the code, at least either modify or remove the comments. Making it even more clear, there are even some commented out calls to internal FFmpeg functions with the original names unchanged. Furthermore, developers of the offending repository themselves admitted taking the code from FFmpeg. This is redacted, but I know exactly where this is from. Here is a message from one of the developers back when FFmpeg first raised the issue. I am MPP developer from Rockchip. I apologize for using FFmpeg code due to a lack of understanding on conflict between Apache and LGPL. We will replace these code in future updates and do more homework on open source license. But this is not the only thing. There was also an issue created on the repo. We can't see issues like this, but we can check an archive. Sadly, the way that GitHub gets archived nowadays is really broken, but we can at least see the top comment. LGPL license violation reported by Upstream FFmpeg. Upstream FFmpeg on Twitter reported an LGPL license violation in MPP's code. If this was due to an oversight, it's best to correct it promptly to avoid further harming Rockchip's reputation in the open source community. Now, thankfully, somebody over on Twitter had been following the thread and archived some of the replies, notably replies from Herman Chen. So far, we are fixing RK3576 issues. Quite a busy time, obviously quite a busy time. The license issue is delayed. That is from 2024. The HEVC, VP9, and AV1 will be fixed. It's going on. There are too many chips to verify and support. The codec refactor is on suspend. This is as of November of this year. So, supposedly it's being worked on, but to me it sounds more like things were just being pushed down the line. So, the violations in question: removing the original copyright notices and authorship information, claiming to have authored the code in question, so removing the old notices and replacing it with their own, and distributing the code under the less restrictive Apache license. So there's nothing wrong with the Apache license. The problem is taking code under a more restrictive license and then relicensing it into that license. You could go the other way. You could go from Apache into a more restrictive license, but that's not what's happening here. Basically what happened is they took code that they didn't write themselves, then claimed to be the copyright holders, claimed to be the authors, and then relicensed the code into something that they wanted to use instead that had a less restrictive license. Don't do that. Presumably where it says their last comment suggests they do not intend to resolve it at all refers to this one here, saying the refactor is on suspend. I don't know if there's something after this, considering that this seems to be the end of the email chain. I'm gonna assume that that's what they're referring to. So, you know, basic tip, if you have a DMCA takedown looming over your head, don't say, we'll deal with it later. That's not how that works. What changes can be made to bring the project into compliance with the license? One possible change is to remove false authorship claims, restore original attribution and copyright notices, and distribute the code under an LGPL compatible license, e.g. LGPL itself, GPL, AGPL, etc. Another is just remove the files. Now, considering that this included a 8265 codec, that wouldn't happen. Also AV1. So if they actually wanted to comply, it would be this right here. As I'm currently recording this, the repo remains taken down. And here, look, let's be honest, here is what's actually going to happen. Nothing. So the repo is probably going to remain down, and maybe they'll re-upload the code on some other public repo. They probably won't though, and if they choose to host it themselves, FFmpeg doesn't have the money to pursue an international copyright lawsuit against a Chinese company. So what's going to happen if they put it back online is it's going to exist online and they can't really stop it. This is the annoying part of FOSS that a lot of people don't talk about. Yes, licenses are important, but licenses only matter as much as you can actually enforce them. What's also very likely is they just don't make it public again, and they just use it in a private repo, they don't fix anything, and then nothing whatsoever changes. Honestly, that's probably the most likely thing that's going to happen. Now, considering there was someone who was saying they were working on it over the past year or so, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they will fix everything, and maybe the repo will go public again. I just have my doubts. But what do you think's gonna happen? And do you think that they were in the right for doing this? Obviously, we can't see the exact code because the files are now gone, and yeah. But besides that, from what you can see, do you think they're in the right? Do you think that Rockchip was in the right? And if they're not in the right, do you think Rockchip is actually going to do anything and fix it? So, let me know. Let me know down below. If you liked the video, go like the video. If you really liked the video, firstly, go subscribe. And if you really, really, really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon subscribe style, the bearer pay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and they're in for a rocky week.